Could you please give me your full name as is recorded on your birth certificate?
Full name is Thomas O. Pickens.
Do you have a nickname?
No.
Okay. Where were you born and raised?
I was born here in Weston, born in the house down Deanville.
What was your job in the military?
I was an amphibious operator. Well, let me give you the full nomenclature, okay?
Okay.
It was a LARCV, a lighter Amphibian Resupply Cargo 510. And we worked from ship to shore, transferring cargo.
Okay. What was your first unit or duty?
Well, I went to basic training at Fort Knox, Kentucky, 1966. I got drafted in 1966, March. From Fort Knox, we went to Fort Rucker, Alabama, slated to be in a helicopter support role of some kind, from door gunner to crew chief. The school handled all those. While we were at Fort Rucker, Alabama, there was like 65 of us that were called out, selected to go to Fort Story, Virginia, to join a Amphibian Company to go to Vietnam. We left, well, we got there in June of 1966, did on-the-job training for 2 months, loaded the ship, went to Vietnam. We were the last troop ship to leave the east coast of the United States. We went down through the Panama Canal, up the coast of California to Okinawa to Vietnam. It took 31 days.
Okay. What would you say you remember most about your military service?
The friendships that I made, the friends that I developed while we were in there.
Have you stayed in contact over the years?
With some, not all of them. Within the last 4 years, we've started to get together, some of us. The company that I was in, this transportation company, after we rotated out of Vietnam in fall of 1967, they became a harbor patrol craft company. Mm-hmm. They actually had the river patrol boats like the Navy had. And they formed a reunion type thing about 12 years ago and started having reunions, and one of my friends found the link to their reunion, and so 4 years ago we decided to go to their reunion to meet some of these other people. Mm-hmm. And since then there's about a dozen of the ones that I was real close friends with that we've gotten together. This year we're going to Rapid City, South Dakota in September for another reunion, and we have even more from my immediate company that's going to be there.
Mm-hmm. Okay. How did you feel about your first assignment?
The Vietnam War itself, politically was very controversial. But myself, the background that I had, my father had served in the World War II, my uncles had served in World War II. Graduating from Weston High School and had Robert Bland as a civics teacher, I never questioned, the call one way or the other. When I was drafted, I went without any even second thoughts. And I felt that it was an honor and a privilege to serve my country. And I still feel that way today.
Mm-hmm. Were you allowed to choose your branch of service?
No.
No.
I was drafted.
Yeah. Okay. This may be a hard one to answer, but do you have any comments or anything about the stress of the situation you were put in?
No, I've never been a stressful person, I guess I would say. Uh-huh. And I never really, one of the big things about the Vietnam War was the post-traumatic stress disorder stuff. We were never actually in combat the company that I was with. We were more of a support group. That we were involved in a lot of things, but as actual combat itself, no. But so there was not that stress that you would have of being under fire, being on the front lines. But, we coped. I mean, it was, and we formed some strong friendships.
Were you able to discuss your time there and everything just fine after leaving?
Yeah,
Yes.
I never had any trouble sharing with people or anything.
Okay.
Like I said, the political climate, especially when I came back in late '67, early '68, it was, after the Tet Offensive especially, it was, if somebody knew you were a Vietnam veteran, you had a chance of being slurred or called names or something. And we went through that, but I never let that bother me. I took it for what it was, I guess.
Do you feel that over the years that opinion has somewhat changed?
Yeah, I think so. I think it really has.
Okay. What was your opinion of your officers?
We were blessed with very good commanding officer staff. Of course, we were in transportation company, and most of them were involved with logistics and stuff. But we had a good officer staff. We had good comradeship between all of us.
Okay. Were you aware of any of the officers being promoted from the ranks?
No, not in our situation.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Did you do any work with any foreign nationals?
We supported and worked with the North Koreans, especially in Cameron Bay. The North Koreans had a perimeter security job in Cameron Bay. Since they were on the other side of the bay, we used our vehicles to support them a lot. We worked with the Australian Navy a lot on some of the operations we did. But yeah, we were involved with others.
Were there any problems or anything that arose working with those foreign nationals?
No. It was no problems at all.
Okay. All right. Did you take part of any sort of operations or any duties at night?
Oh yeah, we worked 24 hours around the clock, 7 days a week. We never stopped for 11 straight months. It was our shifts were 12-hour shifts every day, and we hauled everything from frozen food to ammunition to fuel for the helicopters, depending on where we were at and what type of an operation was going on.
Okay.
But we literally carried everything that the Army offloaded. When we arrived in Vietnam it was early October of 1966, the port at Cameron was just in the stages of developing their deep water offloading facilities. So most everything that was offloaded in Cameron Bay was offloaded by either an amphibious vehicle or a Mike boat or something, some kind of waterbound conveyance. When we got there were probably 50 ships backed up in the harbor that were waiting to be offloaded. I mean, it was a backlog. So we went right to work, and we worked solid for probably 6 or 7 months at that type of a job until the deep water piers were finished, and they had one of the most modern deep water ports in the world that the Russians moved in after we left and used for years. But it was a very nice facility. But so we worked ourselves out of a job as they completed the piers. So we went to other things, harbor patrol and up and down the coast on other things.
And these amphibious vehicles, I mean, the definition of that is just it's a vehicle that actually runs on land and
water.
And water.
It ran about 12 knots in the water and about 30 mile an hour on land.
What experience did you have with this equipment being, I mean, was it sufficient? Or was there any problems with it? Or
No, it did its job very well. We had Our company had 30 of them that we used on a day-to-day basis. We were split into 2 platoons, and initially we started in Cameron Bay, and then we moved smaller details different places up and down the coast. We had a detail in the Trang, we had a detail in Van Rang, a couple other places, and then we rotated people throughout those outposts. But we did everything from taxi service, carrying people back and forth, to ships, to islands out in the harbors and stuff, to actually carrying cargo.
How was the maintenance on these vehicles done? Was it?
We had a maintenance platoon that, everything. I mean, they did a complete overhaul on everything that possibly they could do. As an operator, you had daily maintenance. You know, you had to grease the dry shafts and other things on a regular basis, and keep the oil on the filters and everything changed. That was the operator's duty. But anything that we had problems with, and of course the maintenance took care of it, and they performed very well.
Did you have any experiences with mud or any problems?
Mud? Yeah, there was mud everywhere. Well, when we were in Cameron Bay, it's a big sand dune. Okay, it's was 90% sand, so we didn't have a mud problem there. The vehicle itself had a real low air pressure type tire on it. It'd go just about any place. The only thing we ran into problems with was sometimes in low water with a muddy bottom. We would occasionally snag one, but it wasn't really a problem.
Very rarely got stuck? Or
very rarely got stuck.
How did you just use another one to pull it out?
Yeah.
Or I see.
We all had a tow rope, and it was not uncommon to have to tow somebody on almost a daily basis through something or over something. But they were a very agile vehicle for the size they were and for what they were. They got in and out of the water real well and went places real well.
Were you using, I guess, you know, of course they weren't roads, but were you using paths that were already?
No, we were, most of the places we were, it was improved roads. Some of the outposts, they had improvised roads with PSP and stuff, the portable landing strip stuff. But in Cameron Bay, they had concrete highways. I mean, they developed that place really up to current standards, I guess you would say. But it was, we had no problem. Most of, like Cameron Bay, the longest journey that we went to was at the air base at Cameron Bay, which was about 22 miles. We hauled the ammunition, the bombs and stuff that we offloaded. We would run that to the airport, and that was the longest run. Most of the runs, we just simply came on shore and went to a breakdown area and offloaded at a breakdown area. And then they transferred it to trucks and took it other places with trucks. But with the ammunition, we normally ran it to the air base when we were offloading it. Okay.
Were there any problems that you noticed with, whether it be with your United States military or foreign nationals, with sickness or anything like that during your time that you?
No. I can't really say that I remember anybody having any type of serious illness while we were there in my immediate company. We did have one staff sergeant die from a heart attack, an older gentleman. But as far as the general health of everybody, it was pretty good. I mean, you had all your shots up to date, everything taken in, and it was.
And there was health personnel.
Yeah, they had full hospitals every place. I mean, there was no problem with that. Especially at Cameron, they had a couple large hospitals at Cameron.
Okay. I know I asked you about mud. Now I'm going to ask you about dust. Was there any dust influence on any sort of military life there?
No, like I said, we worked on the coast, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, we were either in the water or just very close to it, so there wasn't really a dust problem.
Okay. All right. I know you touched on this a little bit before, but is there any other things you'd like to add to describe your return home?
No, like I said, when I came back to West Virginia, and there wasn't that type of negative attitude, I don't think, in West Virginia about it. We probably had protests, but not to the extent they had other places. And then I went back to Fort Story, Virginia, and finished out the last 6 months of my enlistment at Fort Story, Virginia. And what we did there was to train new people for the same job that we'd done. But in all of that, I don't think I had any negative experiences with anybody really calling names or anything. I had some people ask some questions that you answer in a truthful manner, and they take it for what they want. And then after I got out of the service, I went back to school at Glenville and graduated from there in 1971.
Okay. Were you able to use the GI Bill for that?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And you were made aware of that. You were made aware that that was an option.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Did you know how long you were going to be in Vietnam?
When we went over, it was a year. Okay. You knew you were going to be there for a year, and it was from the time we left to the time we got back. So we were only in country an actual 11 months because we spent the first month on the ship going over. We packed up our entire inventory and took everything with us. There's 2 ships, and but yeah, I think it took 6 weeks to get the equipment there, but we got there in 4 weeks.
Did you return pretty much the same way you went over?
We flew back.
You flew back.
Yeah, they flew us from Vietnam to Seattle, Tacoma, Washington. That was the way most people came back.
Okay. Is there anything you would like to add or possible advice that you would like to give for our men and women today that are in the service or considering going into the service?
Today we have, since 9/11, we have I think a more willingness in our youth to serve the country. I think in the Vietnam War, as we got into the 70s, the protests and stuff, and the free thinking and all that stuff swayed the way that people felt. But I think we have a very patriotic group of young people today that are willing to serve their country because they realize just how wonderful it is. Okay? It's we live in a good country.
No doubt.
And it's that willingness to serve and to do these things that makes it that way.
Did you have any experiences with individuals that you may had to counsel or help that had also been drafted who didn't want to go?
No, like going back to the start of this, when we were at Fort Rucker, Alabama, and they pulled this group of people out to send to Fort Story to be amphibious operators. We spent 3 days on the train from Dothan, Alabama to Norfolk, Virginia, or to Portsmouth, Virginia. And we got to know each other in those 3 days real quick. Prior to the day they called us out of formation, none of us knew each other. But we were all in the same 2 train cars, and we got to know each other real quick. But we were very similar backgrounds. We'd all had some college education. A year or 2 of college. We were all fairly well like-minded in our views and everything else, and we got along real well.
That friendship definitely helped.
Yeah, and I mean, we were a very compatible group. Now, we were mixed in with the rest of the company that was a little bit more of a broader demographic. But that initial group, we're still very good friends, most of us.
Mm-hmm. Did you operate with any West Virginians, other West Virginians?
Probably 4, 5 in my. It was either 4 or 5 that was in my company.
Do you feel that there was any standing out or any sort of comment you would like to make about, you know, being from West Virginia, or that
the big thing was you got comments about the way you talked. Okay, some of the pronunciation of words and stuff. Everybody made fun of everybody else, and
yeah,
you know, the big thing, even in today's world, when you go someplace else, you say, "Well, I'm from West Virginia." They say, "Well, how close to Roanoke do you live?" or something like that. Yes. You know, they still don't associate it being 2 different states. And that was the big thing, trying to educate people. No, I'm from West Virginia, you know, and we are a separate state. And you know, but it was, yeah. But again, the pronunciation of words and some of the things, you know, you get ribbed, but they got over it.
Yes, yes. Do you think it helped, you know, knowing that there was other West Virginians in with you?
Yeah, I had good friendships with a couple of them, and since we were from West Virginia, but some of the stronger friendships were from people that I met other places. And it was, like I said, it was really a diverse mix of people, and I think that was one of the reasons that we got along so well. I mean, and even do today. I mean, we still there are strong friendships there.
Okay. I'd like to thank you for your service to your country, and I'd also like to especially thank you for agreeing to take part in this project. Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No.
Okay.
If you have any further questions, don't hesitate to ask.
Okay. Well, thank you, sir.
Okay.